I'm Steve Groff from Cedar Meadow Farm. We're located here in southern Lancaster County. Been a farmer for 3 generations and working with my son. Now I have grandchildren, so we like to say the 5th generation has arrived.
Excellent. We'll give a little geographic, since we're talking about a physical location, let everybody know kind of where Lancaster County is and kind of what the environment is around.
So I'm located here in the River Hills, if a lot of people call that, right next to the Susquehanna River. Some of you might be familiar with Muddy Run Park. That's kind of a notable place here in the southern end. So just 10 miles or so west of Quarryville, and like I said, a couple miles from the Susquehanna River.
And we're talking about Pennsylvania here. So for everybody to understand, we're talking about the Mid-Atlantic region in Pennsylvania. And Steve, for you, I've known you for a couple of years, so I want everybody to know that this isn't strangers connecting or anything like that.
Right.
And I've been following your story, but I want to kind of go back to your story in order for the audience to know, because we interviewed you before on a past podcast, but that was a different brand and a different audience and a different distribution channel. So a whole new crowd here.
Yes.
So Steve, take me back to the beginning when you first made when you first questioned conventional farming, and where that specific moment was that you realized that there's got to be a better way to grow food and steward the land that we know.
So I graduated from high school in 1982. So that dates me a little bit. The thing that's important about that is that's when I started really being actively involved in the farm. I always wanted to be a farmer. College was not in my DNA. Although my mom had a degree, but I got to say, for me personally, I had an opportunity to be in the farm here. And so it was in 1982 that I was tired of dealing with ditches in my fields. We have sloped fields. After heavy rainstorms, they would wash out. Sometimes you couldn't even cross those ditches with a tractor and equipment to harvest the crops. So we had to close them. And at the time, I just thought that was a pain and had no concept of soil health, water quality. Frankly, I didn't care. Now everybody knows about the Chesapeake Bay. I didn't care about the Chesapeake Bay. Out of sight, out of mind. I'm just a farmer doing the best I can. So I heard about this practice called no-till, or short for no tillage, not tilling the soil instead of plowing it and cultivating and disking and all those processes that agriculture is kind of well known for. So I started no-till, not tilling the soil, in 1982, thinking that I'll just do that a couple years and I'll have to plow it up again. But here's where the epiphany happened, Nate. The 3rd year into that, on those fields, I noticed when I was planting that my planter was planting easier. The engagement into the ground was much easier, and that confounded me. I thought the ground was going to get harder. And then I started talking to some other farmers who were doing it. Not many were at the time, but they said, well, that's because you're not disturbing the earthworm channels. The previous plant roots are decaying in there, and the soil is beginning to open up like a wood soil, which is always nice and mellow. That made sense to me. So I started realizing that, and then I grasped the whole concept of how can I leverage this in my whole farm. So that field, 1982, 44 years ago, has never been tilled. And what has happened is I've watched that over the years. Now I have 2 inches of pure soil on the top. Not that I made all that soil for my management, but my management has influenced the fact that earthworms have churned up soil. They've eaten residues, and now it's pure soil. So my organic matter is tripled, which is a good thing. If any of you know about agronomic practices and so forth, it holds more nutrients. I can absorb more water. I can do a lot of things that we now call regenerative agriculture. So there's a lot packed into what regenerative agriculture is, but using cover crops, crop rotation, that has been my journey to this point. So it all started trying to fix a problem, and it ended up fixing a lot more problems that I never knew existed at the time. So that's where, I love this term regenerative agriculture. Now we're like regenerating the soil, regenerating the farm, and it goes one step beyond that. We're actually growing healthier food. I'm also a vegetable farmer, and I know we're going to talk about hemp, but I can grow it in such a way that we're actually enhancing the soil. And then I try to help other farmers with my educational efforts that I do among farmers to do that.
When recently in getting ready for this conversation, I watched Kiss the Ground.
Oh yeah.
Would you say that's a really good thing for people if they whether they obviously I want to also say that you have a book out there that people can read, but if they
Mhm.
digest things in a video format, is that something good for a benchmark to catch people up?
Yeah, I like when people bring up Kiss the Ground, they ask me, what do you think of that? I said, well, I know most of the people in it. And actually, there's a follow up called Common Ground. So that would be another one to follow up. They were scheduled to film here for Common Ground about my hemp. And then the filming got delayed and it got too late. My hemp was harvested and it wouldn't have worked. So I do have a connection to that. For non-agricultural people, viewing Kiss the Ground or Common Ground is very, very helpful to give a background of what we're talking about today.
Perfect. Well, and for speaking to you specifically, I mean, you've lived through a couple of different eras of American agriculture. How has the
Mhm.
mindset of the farmer changed from when you started to now, especially in the terms of soil health versus yield at all costs?
Yeah, I do chuckle because I have a saying that I don't blame my grandpa for farming the way he did. Although right now that would be totally unacceptable. Tilling the soil up every year, fields weren't set on the contours. I mean, I got aerial images back to 1940 of this farm here. You could see the erosion in the ditches. You can see them. Since we started using these practices for the last 30, 40 years, their ditches are gone. They're no longer there. You cannot see them. And so that's been a big change. For me personally, once I started seeing and understanding that there was a whole lot more to just putting seeds in the ground and harvesting a crop, that there's a whole nother, I guess you'd say, world, if you will, of life, biological life. And we talk about cows, pigs, sheep, all the animals that farmers tend, but we don't talk too much about the life in the soil, all the critters in the soil, or as some of us like to say, the micro herd in the soil, which everybody's heard of earthworms, but that's the big ones. Then you get down to microscopic, I mean, ultra microscopic. And basically, those critters, they eat one another. That's what it comes down to. They basically eat one another in the food chain. And, when you think about it, we grow plants, we eat plants, and animals eat plants, and that all gets recycled without going into the messy details here. But that gets recycled and reused. That's the way the whole world was designed to function. So now it's kind of like when you think about for the past 100 years or so, humanity or our society has pretty much gravitated. If we can make it easier, faster, cheaper, it's good. Well, we're paying for that now because sometimes faster, easier, and cheaper is not as healthy. And there's been an industry born out of that. It's called Big Pharma and Big Ag. And it's a great business model providing all this stuff. And then it doesn't really help our health very good. We have 70% of Americans die of chronic illnesses. Just 70 years ago, it was like less than 5%. It's not all with our food, but a lot of it is. And I will just get on my tangent here that ultra processed food and highly processed food is almost like a narcotic. It's addictive. And I'm putting myself into this, we have fallen prey to that. And it's really turned out to be, you might say, expensive. We have the highest healthcare costs in the world for developed country, but we're one of the sickest. There's something a matter here. So we have to back up and try to figure it out. And I'm simply saying, well, let's try to mimic nature as much as possible. But I'm not suggesting we forage for berries and nuts. Maybe in a Sunday afternoon hike, great idea. But that's not, so where in that can we do that? And I could give you details how we're doing that on the farm here. And I'm still learning. This is the ever-going process. So that's a little bit of my thoughts of where we need to mimic nature. That's what it comes down to.
And mimicking nature, you led me into my next question perfectly, was resilience versus efficiency. And in the past we've gone for efficiency, but when you actually mimic nature, you go for resilience. So kind of elaborate a little bit about how
Mhm.
sticky and sustainable it is versus the efficiency.
Yeah, and we can't forget efficiency. There's a balance here. But we can't at the expense of efficiency suffer, some goodness of what our own health. I think our own health is the highest value a lot of us really have when we think about it. So what some of the principles are use the word rejuvenate or whatever, regenerative, all those words are kind of getting to be buzzwords, is in the way we're trying to mimic nature is we're trying to keep a living root in the soil, whether it be my cash crop that I'm selling to the public or a cover crop that I'm growing just to protect the soil. We want the soil to be covered because in nature, the soil is always covered. Things grow. A lot of times, if you're a gardener, you're like, well, I hate weeds. Well, no, weeds have a purpose. Weeds is nature's way of saying, I need covered. And if you think about it, the soil is just like us as human beings. When it's cold outside, like it has been for the last couple of weeks, we need covered. We need protection. Same for the microbes. They need covered. They need protection to function. And when it gets really hot, you either put sunscreen on or you wear a long sleeve shirt or you protect yourself from the heat. So microbes generally are like people. They like in that 60 to 80 degree range there. That's where they function the most or the best. So when we keep our soil covered, we keep it from the extremes of cold, keep it from the extremes of hot. Then also the diversity of species. Just look at the woods. Pretty much everywhere on the face of the earth, there's diversity where humans have not intervened. And then the added thing of having animals. Now, not every farm is going to be able to have animals, but when you look in the wild, there's animals there. And that provides a certain function of trying to mimic nature. So how can we do that? We have a small herd of sheep. We rotate them around the farm here. That's how we incorporate animals. Granted, it's very small, but I'm always growing cover crops. I'm not disturbing the soil. I alluded to that earlier, but I'm going to bring that back again. That's mimicking nature. Somehow a trees or the forest grows just fine when we don't touch it. So how can we take those aspects and grow food? That's what we're trying to do today.
When you let's talk about environmental and climate conditions specifically. Like you've seen floods and droughts and a lot of unpredictable seasons over the last over 40 years. How do you think the regenerative farming actually performed when conditions did get extreme for you?
So we do tests here. I'm certified in regenerative now by a company called Regenerative. And what they do is it's more of an outcomes-based assessment. I'll just quickly, if I will, people ask, are you organic? The answer is no, I'm not organic. It's different though, similar, but different. Organic is more a process-based system. You check the boxes. I didn't use these pesticides. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. Pretty much, and you're good to go. You check the boxes, certified, good to go. Regenerative is okay. Let's see how well you're really doing on your farm. So they, to your point here, they come in, they check my water infiltration rates. Okay, that's important because when we have these deluges of water, is it all running off and creating floods? Or is a good portion of it actually soaking into the soil? You can't fake that. And your soil has to be conditioned to do that. My fastest measurement has been 17 seconds to take in 1 inch of rain. Can you imagine in the whole region, if all the soils would be like that, the first inch of rain, there's zero runoff. If we could do that on the fields. So that's one of the factors in looking at. They listen to the birds. They listen to the diversity of the birds that they're here. You can't fake that. We want to be attracting songbirds and all kinds of birds. We want to attract beneficial insects. They measure the insects and so forth, as far as the diversity of species and so forth. All these are actually outcomes of a system. So what that translates into, and particularly people can understand this with food, is that actually is a direct connection there to how nutrient dense or how healthy your food is. So when you grow a tomato like I do, or a squash like I do, it's going to be packed with nutrients in there, be better than, I'll say, their average out there, because we have a higher microbial population in the soil because of everything I just explained. And we don't have time to explain it all here, but I hope you can kind of see the analogies here as how this works out. So my simplistic definition of regenerative agriculture is growing food for health. Growing food for health. Now, I think we might be talking about fiber here in a minute, but the same thing applies. But I have to say, most of us can understand, I, as a farmer here, am trying to grow food for health.
Perfect. And you're leading me in perfectly without you even knowing my questions here. So hemp is kind of reemerging as a major American crop. All right. From a regenerative standpoint, what makes hemp uniquely suitable or not suitable for this kind of agricultural model?
Oh, hemp is perfect, man. Hemp is like a hand in a glove for regenerative. I mean, those of you who have heard about hemp hear all these miraculous things that it does. And I've heard people say, oh, it's drought resistant, it's insect resistant, it's disease resistant. You just throw the seeds out and you'll have an amazing crop. Well, it's just not quite that good, if I can say that, but it has a lot of characteristics that fit right in. It's like this plant is, I think, the best plant God made for humans because it's so many different things. I'm today going to focus on the fiber side, but we know the medicinal. We know all the sides of here of many, many different uses, construction and all kinds of things with hemp. But it has a nice rooting system. It grows deep. It doesn't need as much water. It has very few pests, very few diseases. So it basically is a fairly easy plant to grow. If you're a professional farmer, I would say, and know what you're doing. And you put that plant in the context of a regenerative system, it's like, again, it's just like the perfect plant, you might say, to grow regeneratively. So that's why it fits so good into what I'm trying to do here in my farm.
Do you see differences in the cannabinoid? I know it's not a fiber question, but the cannabinoid development, the plant vigor, and terpene expression when hemp's grown in living soil versus conventional output inputs?
I'm very glad you asked that question. So I forget which year. I guess the year after it became legal here, 2019 was the first season. I got a call from, I was contacted from Hershey Medical Center, Penn State College of Medicine at Hershey Medical Center. They're doing some research on cannabinoid side of hemp. And they wanted to know if I'd be willing to produce, if I wanted to submit a sample of my CBD product that I was growing at the time. I said, sure. I got a call, I don't know, several months later, and they're like, what are you doing with how are you growing your plants? Because your CBD there's something different about it. Actually, they were saying that there's some traits about it, more terpenes, broader array of terpenes and so forth. And I said, well, I don't know, but I'd like to say it's because I'm using my regenerative practices. That led to a 3-year replicated experiment where we used my practices versus more of a conventional farm practice in the neighborhood. And we literally did come up with some differences. Now, it wasn't black and white. I'll just say that. It was subtle, but the point being here, remember I said before about growing food, it can be more nutritionally dense is a term we like to use. When you're talking about cannabinoids in a hemp plant, THC, CBD, CBG, all the cannabinoids that are out there, we noticed a difference in how they were grown and the type of soil they were grown. The question comes back, and this will probably take years to figure out, what do I do as a farmer to maximize that? Because it's not a direct, was it the cover crops I grew? What was it? And, we have that experiment's finished now. And they continue to research the cannabinoid profile and how it can affect human health at Penn State College of Science there at the Hershey Medical Center. But they have enough of my product now that I haven't grown any here in the last year. But if they need more, we can grow it for them if they want to. But I use that example to say, yes, to answer your question, yes, there was a difference in how it's grown. And, I understand the need to grow indoors. And I understand that. Sometimes I feel that's a little bit of a compromise, maybe, but it does depend on what kind of soil it's actually used indoors. So I'm not going to quibble over that. Just saying, It'd be best if they could grow it outdoors, but I also understand the constraints to that as well. So we'll leave that alone.
And I work in the
Mhm,
alcohol industry, and like
mhm.
it was wine specifically, and sometimes with beer, we talk about the terroir and the
Yes.
fingerprint of the land and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think regenerative farming could create a similar regional identity for hemp in the beverage space?
I think it could. It's not going to happen soon. It's probably not the most marketable thing yet. In that, although the story's nice, it's always difficult to tell the story on a label or even on a on a storefront or an end aisle. You can on a website to try to drive people to your website. That's what I'm trying to do with my vegetables. Where we have QR code on some of my larger items. I can have a larger sticker in store QR code. We try to do that to kind of give people who care. That there's people who care, some who don't, but the people who care, it's like, okay, this is how these tomatoes were grown, and eventually this is how this hemp was grown. I mean, right now, in the fiber side, there's a lot of talk about carbon footprint because hemp. You ask, where does hemp fit in? Well, one thing, pulls in it pulls in like more CO2 than almost any crop you can grow. About like corn, or even better than corn. So we're taking that out of the atmosphere, putting it in the soil. That's a positive. That's a bonus. So for people who would be thinking about, well, I'd like to support that. Well, then you buy a fiber or natural fiber shirt, clothing, whatever it is, and support that. Is it going to be more expensive? Probably is. Part of the reason it's more expensive now, and people tell me all the time, well, I like your ideas, Steve, but I can't afford to buy a hemp shirt. I get that. But we're still working like in the Stone Age with our equipment and even the process of doing it because it's been banned for over 80 years. So we learn what we can from what my great 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 grandparents maybe used, but it's 2026. So what's the latest here now? What's the latest technology? I am developing hemp machinery here to cut hemp, to process, to bale it. We're developing that here because you don't go out to John Deere or New Holland and say, I'd like a hemp cutting machine. They'll just laugh at you. They might be interested when there's millions of acres planted, but not before then. So it's part of the whole. It's just kind of like it's a chicken and egg. We hear that all the time. And in order for us to scale up and become more efficient and understanding varieties, there's just now being released some varieties that were bred here in the United States for hemp, just now. So we've been working with stuff from all around the world. I've grown things in my farm from China, from Australia, from Europe, and because they never banned it, so they had advanced varieties. But we have to adapt the ones that work here. So, long-winded answer there, Nate. But
No,
it's a complicated thing.
Don't feel bad about any long-winded answers because this is an education session for everybody, and I think more people need to realize that cost is as directly to efficiency. And right
Mhm.
now in the hemp space, it's a bunch of Frankenstein equipments from creative, resourceful farmers. I mean, that's really, and that's not a dig; it's a
No,
compliment to exactly what you said.
yeah.
Is like we have to have a
Our
lot of
word.
fun.
Yeah, I like Frankenstein, but our word is fabricable.
Yeah.
Fabricable. That we actually made 3D printed out a little sign, caution, fabricable in operation or something like that. So you're exactly right.
So with your work right now is heavily in the fiber, but I want to I have a couple questions about the beverage space because you
Mhm.
do know the compounds and you know the
Yeah.
mechanics of things and you can answer them very well. I
Yeah.
also, real quick, before as we keep going, I want people to realize that I want to give you context of your history as well. So for 1 second, if you can, give them a broad over of the fact that you just didn't get into farming in 1982, you changed the model of how you farmed. So talk a
Mhm.
little bit about generationally how farming's affected your life.
So yeah, so I'm a third generation farmer. I'm sitting right now in the house that my grandparents bought in 1935. So I'm proud of that legacy. And like I said earlier, I always wanted to be a farmer. And throughout the years, I would say I was like most farmers coming out of high school, and even I characterized the culture of the day was, we're farming. This is how we do it. We just want to make enough money to go to next year, and maybe once in a while buy a tractor or a piece of equipment. That's pretty much where farmers are even at today. You don't get into agriculture to get rich. until you really cash out and sell your farm, and you'll probably get 5 times what it was paid. But that does you no good. You know, the value of your land does you no good until you sell it. And then what would you do? You know, through this time here in my journey, I will say, I started with no tillage, got into cover crops, got into crop diversity, and I started speaking about what I do here in my farm. Led me to, I've spoken in 12 different countries all over the U.S., Canada. And it did 2 things. It because I have a desire to help others. So helping farmers to do what I learned was good. But I also then in turn learn from others when I'm out. You know, I hear other speakers or other farmers that I meet that come to my meetings and so forth, and you build relationships. I was just thinking this morning, I was texting with a guy in Indiana who I've met over the years. I would have never known him if it wouldn't have been for, you know, some of my involvement getting around. So I'm a curious learner. And that just has really driven me to continue to learn. I'm still learning today, and there is some fascinating things that are coming down the pike in agriculture. I mean, people wonder, like, well, is there any AI in agriculture? Absolutely, there is. I can get on my phone here now, and I can ask questions and get answers back in seconds, where before I would either look it up online or spend some time talking to somebody or whatever. I can interpret test results. I can get test results back when I test some of my plants, my crops, and boom, I can get a reading right back of recommendations. Now I still have to ground truth that, but you know, AI is AI. It's only as good as the information that it has. But so, you know, I'm not afraid to learn. So over the years, it has very much evolved, but my focus boils down to this: I want to help people, and I want to help the planet.
It's an important, not to divert away from our topic, but it is important to what you just said, is that, you know, AI is a vital tool to accelerate our learning, but it's not the be all end all, and you still got to verify a lot of things. So I appreciate that even the farming community, that is a useful tool, in its lane, and we can push through. Back on track is people drink the hemp beverages, wellness, relaxation, social rituals. How does soil health translate into quality or predictability of that consumer experience for them?
Well, growing in good soil can only be helpful. And you may have heard of a company called Maker's Mark. They're pretty big on. I don't know if that's a competitor or what that is to you, but I just know that they have embraced regenerative agriculture, and that's a pretty. I admire them for it, because what is it, 7 to 10 years until their product from when it's grown to it's released. Yep. So they're like 5 to 6 years into this now or more, and they've embraced it wholeheartedly. So there's a company in your space here that has embraced this, and they see a future to it, and that sends a signal through the whole industry. I'm sure other people are kind of like, are we going to get on this wagon, or we might become obsolete? So in order to demonstrate tangible test results, I wish it was easier. The question we keep coming up with, and I'll use my vegetables because that's where I'm in with this space. What should a tomato be? How much selenium should be in a tomato? I'm thinking about the immunity aspect. One thing COVID did is it made people more aware of, I think, their own immunity and healthy eating. I think that's a positive that came out of COVID. So, but then when I say we, those of us who are in this space, like, well, right now, the only thing we have to go on is what the average is, what the average nutrient of a tomato is across the nation. Well, we know that's probably not the ideal, because we know that average has gone down over the last 50, 70 years. The average nutritional density and nutritional values of our produce has gone down. And people are like, well, why is that? I'll tell you why. Because we as farmers don't get paid for it. We get paid for yield. When you go to the store to buy a tomato, you pay it by the pound. So guess what? Why in the world will I put selenium in my tomato? I don't get paid for it. It's not a yield enhancer. The other, if you're knowing about agronomy, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, sulfur, those type of things influence yield. That's what I focus on, because that's what I get paid for. So we as farmers in the whole umbrella of efficiency and everything else, we haven't put that stuff in there. And we've also shut down the microorganisms that actually make that available with all the high salt fertilizers we have put on. And I'm just talking as a farmer representing all of agriculture here now. I'm breaking out of that now. We're finding out, oh, let's get back to mimicking nature. So then to your question, how does that translate to consumer? I should have had it here, but I don't have it. I don't have it laying here right now. I don't think, but there are, yes, I do. Oh, this is good. So this is a nutrient meter here. This is from Australia. It's still a prototype. This you can actually go up in the store to a tomato or a pepper, and you can push the button on it, and it will give you a reading. Now this reading right now is not reading. It's not reading all of the nutrients in a product, but it gives you an overall reading of what that product is on a scale of 1 to 100. The higher the reading, the better. So if you pick a tomato, it might be 26. You check another tomato, it's 31. I'm going to buy the tomato that said 31. So this is getting close to consumers. Now, on the farmer side of it, they have more sophisticated ones that will tell me you're a little bit low on zinc or iodine or whatever. And I could do this in the field. See, I can test for all that right now, take the leaves off, send them to a lab. A week later, I get it back. A week sounds like a short time, but it's not. If I could test on the go, it's now. We just this year, it's been released that we can actually go in a leaf. I can actually come back to the same leaf in my tomato and see what the nutrient values are changing. And I know that's going into my tomato that you're eventually going to eat. So I hope for a day, Nate, that I can sell my produce, my veggies, based on nutritional values rather than on simply yield or the weight of it. So that is now, and again, the use of AI is part of that equation, because it's not simple to make this all happen, to do measurements, just like scan them in instantly. So that's, to me, will be a game changer when that happens.
You mentioned like a post-COVID world, and that's, again, you're leading me into every question perfectly. Is consumers kind of are questioning everything in the food and the drink, and how does regenerative agriculture offer a transparency story for, let's say, hemp beverages that they really desperately need right now? And like you said, you can't only say so much on the can, on the shelf, and on an end cap and a display. So is this also a great enhancer as far as a unique proposition to consumers, saying, hey, we trace our seed all the way back, and here's what our seed does to the ground around you?
Well, I would like to say that when people understand what we're trying to do and have a better background to that, it's going to cause them to like, well, I support what you're doing. I believe in what you're doing, and I want to buy this beverage that's what you're doing. But nobody knows Steve Groff. Nobody knows Cedar Meadow Farm, when I talk about the consumer side of it. This is why I kind of reluctantly, but then I saw the rationale why I'll say signed up for a certifying agency. And again, we all know organic. If you're certified organic, you kind of pass through a test. It's like a third-party test. And it's like, this is what that means. People generally know. I would like to say people don't really know, but they generally know. And so that's what led me to be certified, so that I can say, you can go on the Regenerative website. You can see my farm. You can see where I scored. I happen to score very high, which is great. The other thing too is I will tell people, you're willing to come to my farm and I'll show you what I'm doing. I have nothing to hide. So I can't have daily tours, but if you know what I'm saying, it's just like I have nothing to hide. I'm an open book, and I will help farmers who want to grow in this way. Some farmers are just like there already, and other farmers are very far away. It's all over the map. But I can tell you there is a trend. It's no longer a fad to grow crops this way. But to get that story out is just what you're doing today, having me on your podcast here, and to help people understand. People are now starting to recognize the word regenerative in the context of agriculture. It's starting. It is worldwide. You have the big worldwide companies like Pepsi and Coke. They're grappling with this. And even other companies like ADM is the largest buyer in the world of grains, corn, soybeans, rice, wheat, all that stuff. They are talking about regenerative. I remember I was speaking in Indiana several years ago, and I noticed from the podium, 2 rows down, were 2 gentlemen sitting there with ADM on their shirts. I thought, I can't believe they're here. Why were they here? Talked to them afterwards, and they said, we're just trying to figure out this regenerative thing. Well, it turns out, as years go by, now they are actually encouraging their farmers, incentivizing their farmers to have some sort of a regenerative growing practice. One of the things I don't know if this is the right time or not, but if any of you heard the term greenwashing, that's when you have when something turns in, like shifts over from the fad area to the trend area, it's like, I think this is going to stick. All of a sudden you have everybody wanting to jump on board, and they'll like say, oh, I'm regenerative as well because I grew a cover crop. All right, that's fair enough, but there's more than that. And so when you greenwash is basically when you're not being forthright. You're not being accurate in what you're doing. Because when I see claims by some people, I start digging deeper in their website, and it's like, even I can smell that rat. They're not really regenerative. They're just putting the name up there. So, it just comes with the territory. Anytime you have something good, you're going to have copycats. So I would just caution us all. When you see the word regenerative, be careful. I will say this, and this is a fact, because I sell to Whole Foods. If you use and claim regenerative, you have to be certified by a recognized agency that they recognize. Right now, they're only recognizing 5 agencies out there. So to their credit, I'm going to say, to their credit, they're trying to not get into the regenerative greenwashing space. So again, it's an FYI, just because the word regenerative is across your beverage container or in their website. If you're really, really serious, you might want to dig a little deeper. It just is what it is these days.
And so we'll shift gears to like hemp industry as a whole now.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And hemp's kind of sitting in a strange regulatory place. One thing I think that the industry as a whole is not talking about, and they are in the legislative area, farmers just went on to DC and all this stuff, and that's the good part. But I don't think the consumer base, which is about 40% of our followers, the rest is all the people in the industry. So speaking to that 40%, explain to them how this uncertainty affects farmers, like a business that's a co-packer, a beverage brand. If the ban comes, they'll sell off their inventory liquidation, try to figure out their losses and move on. But I don't think people understand the staging and the phasing that happens way prior to that instance when a product's already packaged, and talk a little bit about how this affects this tier of the ecosystem.
I think I can say that, and I know a lot of people would agree with me that are inside the industry right now, is essentially on a pause mode. And the thing that we lack most on the non-cannabinoid side, the non-beverage side, the thing we lack is we don't have the processing. And we don't have the processing of this hemp. In other words, to get it from stalk to animal bedding, or from stalk to construction, or from stalk to making clothing. There's very, very, very little processing in the United States yet. There are some. There's about a dozen processors that are running, but that's nothing. We need 500. So because of that, it's all because no one has really felt comfortable, and I'm being kind, I guess, to pony up the money to invest, because this is not a quick turnaround. When you're developing a new industry, it's risky, and part of because it's risky is because this industry happens to have a lot of government tentacles reaching into it. And I'll take my farmer hat off here figuratively and say, if I was an investor, what if the government comes down really hard and unreasonable? I don't want my $10 million wasted. That slows it down. So it's just kind of like, this is where we're at right now. Now, even this week, right now, we're in the middle of February. It is being discussed again, the Farm Bill. And that Farm Bill was supposed to be passed in 2023, I'm reminding us all. And here we are. For some reason, government gets away. Deadlines are just mere suggestions, it seems. So they're back at it again, trying to figure this out. And the hemp is a topic in there. So we'll see when that's sorted out. I hope that when the farm bill gets signed and the hemp is a part of that and the agriculture side of it, there'll be clarity, there'll be guardrails, and investors say, okay, I'm ready, I'm in. I am right now looking out my window, right out here, of 1 million pounds of hemp. 1 million pounds of hemp. Why do I have 1 million pounds of hemp? That's because I've had 3 years of broken contracts, broken promises, and a lot of good intentions. And I will say, from good people. And it's because it's a domino effect. And I'm not going to blame anybody, because some people can say, well, Steve, why did you take that risk? Well, okay. Point well taken. Fair point. But I've also been talking with some people who said, I want all your hemp. I want all your hemp, but probably not till later this summer or later on. Because there are things developing now in the background that are looking positive. So it's not all doom and gloom. I can tell you that. It is moving forward, but right now at a snail pace. I was just on a call this morning before this conversation here from a potential very multi-million dollar investor in hemp, thinking of setting up shop here in the area. So those discussions are happening, but it's in almost, I would say, a pause right now here in the Mid-Atlantic region. But there's a lot of, again, I got to shout out to Cornell University, our neighbors to the north. The New York State has given some more money into hemp projects in all sectors of the hemp industry in this past 2 weeks. So good for them. Hopefully there'll be a little peer pressure for us here for our Department of Agriculture. So there's stuff happening, but right now, it's kind of sifted out a few of the people who never really in it in the first place. Oh, I'm just it's squeezing me financially. I mean, I have 1 million pounds of hemp up there I didn't get paid for. So we just need to survive at this point.
That's exactly it. And do you see kind of regenerative hemp production as a pathway to revitalize local farming communities rather than centralizing agriculture?
It's going to be a part, but with hemp right now, there's no premium. There's no real advantage if you have a regenerative or organic label to it. It's just we just got to get something going. I mean, the plant itself, it doesn't come out. They see cotton has all kinds of baggage because of the high pesticide use that's used in cotton and so forth. That comes with a set of baggage. And here we have hemp, a fiber crop that could replace some of the cotton usages, which comes to the table fairly benign in the context of detrimental aspects to grow it. So just hemp itself right now is the 95%. I mean, when I'm talking to people who want to buy it, they're not like, is it organic or is it regenerative? But when I tell them what I do, that scores points, if you will, and maybe it'll help me get in the door a little quicker than someone else. I don't know. But that's kind of where that's at right now.
So everything we talked about in the past hour, almost hour now, it requires patience and years, sometimes before the soil rebounds. Like we said, there was 5 to 7, things like that. In a culture that we live in today, and especially in the past few weeks and months, everybody's focused on quarters and weeks and months. Yeah. What is a suggestion from your end, because you've been in it so long, about how, if you can remember back to when that mindset shift went to generationally and thinking long term, what do you think is some tips that people can have to kind of shift from the quarterly spreadsheets to thinking generationally?
Well, from an investor standpoint, like I've had people call me and say, I'm interested in hearing what you're doing, Steve. I have access to money, whatever. I'd say right away, this is at least a 5-year play. And it may not be, but I'm so tired of wasting my time with people. You get down the road and they're like, I'm not interested. I'm pretty like, as much as I would really appreciate investors, I've literally been in dozens of face-to-face meetings and have very little to show for it. And it's not like I've not been in business for a long time. So it's frustrating, I will say. But so you almost can't look at the weekly, the quarterlies right now if you're going to be in the space. And if that doesn't work as an investor, this is not the crop now. I think that hemp is never going to explode. It's never going to do that. And that's probably good because we experienced that in the CBD. It exploded. I mean, it was huge, and that fell off a cliff from the farmer side of it. We don't want that to happen. So I don't see anybody investing in here, and even from a farmer's standpoint, I've had farmers just ask me just last week, "Hey, can I grow hemp?" I'm like, probably wait this year out. So I'm cautioning that to happen right now because, I don't want people to get burned again. You might say like they did in the CBD craze. So yeah, it's a long play. It's a long play. If you're a farmer, if you're an investor, whatever, it's a long play, and you have to see the end game for what it is. It is not going to be a quick turnaround. That's the problem these days with all this AI and data centers and all the glitzy stuff you hear about. Yeah, you put in 100,000 and you make it in 6 months. That's not going to happen in him.
My last question is like taking the present day of where we are, and I definitely want everybody to realize like what you're being real right now. And you're saying real things, and I don't want anybody to look at this as an alarmist thing because this is the practical logic that's involved in farming and agriculture. Is somebody like you has to look backwards at the same time of looking forwards. So kind of what's success look like in 20 years from now with regenerative agriculture as we speak right now? And I realize that it all could change. Yeah.
Well, first of all, if I can address some of the political scene first, why do I, as a farmer, have to get all 10 fingerprinted to grow fiber hemp? Why do I have to get an FBI criminal background check? It makes no sense. This stuff is just like corn. And I tell people, just use the corn analogy. Hemp or cannabis, which is the overarching word for all forms of hemp, marijuana, CBD, clothing. Corn, we have popcorn, we have sweet corn, we have field corn. It's all corn, but it's different. And I like to say, if popcorn would have THC in it, they would ban all corn. Well, that makes no sense. That's what they've done with hemp. They use THC to ban the whole crop. And now we're suffering for it. And I just can't believe we're 6 years into this. I just went and got my fingers printed again. And I got to sign up. I got to pay a permit. Why can't it be end use? Corn farmers don't have to get a permit or an FBI background check to grow corn, but you can make whiskey from corn. So just saying, it should be end use. So I understand if I'm growing for medicinal or whatever, that's needs to be higher regulated. I get that. But for those of us who are just growing fiber hemp, so I hope that goes away in the future. It's just a pain. Some farmers say, I'm not growing it. If I have to get an FBI background check, because it's a psychological thing. I do it because I see the end game and it's worth it. Back to your original question. Regenerative agriculture is the direction the world is going. I think that cannot be denied. How it's going to look in 20 years, I can't really predict, but I can tell you this. It's going to continue the move to less synthetic chemistry being used on agriculture. And I'm willing to take time. I'm not the one that say, well, we need to ban all this poisonous stuff. Well, no, neither can we ban fossil fuels tomorrow. The world would stop if we would do that. Does that not mean we don't try to work at ways to better manage them? Same thing I feel like in agriculture. And look at the people take all kinds of medications. You want to go homeopathic right away tomorrow? I'm a supporter of that. But if I have to buy a pill for a certain thing, I will, but I don't run to the pharmacy every time I sneeze. So I see regenerative agriculture is going to very much shape our future. And I will put it out there for farmers. If you don't pay attention, you may become obsolete. And I will say in the context of our own human health, if you don't pay attention and buy the best food or good food for you, your chances of getting sick will increase if you don't do that. There's no guarantees. It's a very complex thing. We're talking about biology here in both what we eat and also we as human beings. There's a lot of factors more than just food go into our overall health and well-being. But I think if we pay more attention to that in the future, 20 years from now, I believe we can be healthier. And one of the things, and I'll put a plug in here for natural fibers. I mean, I think there's something to be said about using and wearing natural fibers, whatever they be, flax, cotton, hemp, whatever it is. And then the medicinal side, my goodness, you know, all the things you can get out of hemp, all the cannabinoids that out of hemp from THC, CBD, CBG, and 50 or 60 other cannabinoids, if we would study them like we study to make pills and everything now, we could have a lot of benefits without all these side effects. I mean, just watch a TV commercial. It's like deadly. I mean, half the TV commercials, all these, this pill is going to kill you, but you need it to do this, you know? So I don't know. I just think we're shifting in the right direction. There's never been a time in my life that we've kind of like, oops, we need to take a look at some of this more natural stuff. Not that we throw any baby out with any bathwater, but take a better look at it. I see that in so many different sectors of life. So that's my opinion of 20 years from now. It's going to be different.
Well, I agree, and I think we don't have time to go into a longer thing, but I will close out with this one. Is you know, it's something that I've been considering a lot more lately as I learn more about plastics and how it is actually how it absorbs into our skin from clothing that we're wearing, and it really makes me think about a lot of things. And I'm sitting here with a Cabela shirt right now that is full of plastic. And, you know, it's one of those things that we can have a whole another hour on that. Pandora's box, but I want everybody to kind of, in closing out, Steve, let everybody know kind of where they can find you online, and as far as the resources. I know on LinkedIn as well, you're very active in posting, and from an educational standpoint, how people can connect with you.
So yeah, if you want to see some of my current stuff online, LinkedIn is a really good one. I'm also on Facebook and X as well, or Steve at stevegroff.com. Yeah, so my website, stevegroff.com, gives you an idea of what I do. So, and I do have a book there. I've ran out of the print of it, but you can still download it with the PDF if you want. And in spite of several people wanting me to audio version, I just never got around to that. But that being said, you know, I do some speaking engagements around the area as needed. And yeah, I'm very, very active in researching and developing hemp on the agriculture side of it. So I see a future for it.
Well, Steve, I appreciate you taking the time today. I always enjoy conversations with you because they're so information dense, and I mean that in the best way possible. You are so good at getting right to the point and getting right to a way that I can understand it. And I know the audience is definitely feeling well more informed about this as well. So thank you so much for taking the time today.
You're welcome. If I could just say thanks for what you're doing, because you have a platform that I don't. So 1 + 1 = 3.
Absolutely. And I will close this out with something that I know you and I feel fondly about is, as usual in 2026, I remind everybody, when you're walking down the street on the sidewalk, look at a stranger, hold a door for a stranger, whether it's male, female, or a German Shepherd. Just let people know that you care. And when you're standing at the gas station filling that cup of coffee, ask the guy next to you how he's doing today, but pause to actually care about what he says, and maybe it'll turn into a conversation. So I remind everybody that we have more things in common than we do differently. And Steve, I thank you for the years of always being able to depend on you for an education. And I want to commend you on everything you're doing, because it has been an uphill battle for a long time. And I'm glad that despite all the regulatory things, you get to breathe a little bit knowing that the army behind you is getting bigger every day.
It is. Yep. Thanks. That's a good word.
Excellent. Well, hey, you have a good rest of your day, Steve. You take care.
Thanks,
buddy.